This
Okay.
conference will now be recorded.
All right. Anyone, any questions, guys, before I get started with this with today's session? Any questions from the yesterday's class? Anyone, anything that I can take from the yesterday's session? So yesterday we
Kiran,
were looking at. Go, please.
I have a
Sorry, go ahead.
question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to execute the yesterday code, that you have written, right, for the param.
Okay. Okay.
So in that, so the state, so can you, you have that, if you can bring it otherwise.
Mhm. Sure. So let's go there and let's bring the code yesterday that we have written. Let's see, this is PowerShell class, and I think what we were doing is our recreation. So let me try to open this up with the
That
PowerShell
one.
IC. Okay, just give me a second. Let's open up the IC. Okay.
Okay, this one. So
Mm-hmm.
in the line number 18, right? New hyphen ASC resource
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
hyphen dollar name. So it says I'm getting an error there. It is
Mm-hmm.
it is saying cannot validate argument on parameter name. So the argument
Okay.
is null. Provide an argument that is not null or empty, and then try the command again. Which
Okay.
means dollar name value should already exist in the memory, right? I think.
Dollar name value shouldn't already exist in the memory. Dollar name value, if it exists in the memory, then my entire purpose of having a dynamism, kind of gets beaten. Now the point here is
Hmm.
that are you passing a value to your script while running it out? Like, are
Now,
you
if I
on the
run the
runtime?
script also, it is not. Yeah, I try to run the script. I'm getting that error.
Right, but when you try to run the script, are you passing the value on the runtime? Like, are you declaring the value for the dollar
Oh,
name?
I'm not passing the value. No, I'm not giving the value.
Yes, so that's the reason this is going as a null value, and it's getting passed to this particular null value out here, and then this line is breaking.
Okay,
This is your
so after the
breakpoint.
script,
Mhm.
I need to write.
Yes, definitely. For example, the error that you might be facing right now is something like this. So let me go ahead and open up a PowerShell and let me try executing the same thing and let me reproduce the error that you kind of get. So if I go ahead, take this script out, let's say cd into that particular directory, and if I do something like this, and let's do rg creation and say enter, it goes into the script. It takes some time. I PowerShell, kind of takes some time out here. So let's go there, and this is what you might have been getting. Cannot validate the argument name. It's empty,
Yeah.
null, and all that stuff.
How do we
Yes,
pass?
because sorry.
How do I pass that value?
So how do I
Script.
pass this value? Yes, for which, if you look at yesterday's class, that's what we were doing, right? So we said dollar backslash rg creation space,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then do a control and a space. And okay, fine. Let's do one thing. Let's say hyphen, then do control and a space. And this is where your, let's say, parameters kind of populate up. If your test says 01, this is how you're passing the value to the parameter. And then it's saying, okay, fine, I understand you want to, let's say, go and create a, let's say, a test 01 resource group.
Yeah,
It took
got it.
that
Got it.
value and then it
I
went ahead
missed
and
it.
created this, right? So,
Yeah.
so yes, so we have to pass it on the runtime execution, like while you're
I
executing the
was
script,
expecting.
pass
I was
it.
thinking. Yeah, I was confused with the read
Mhm.
host. It prompts for the user data, right? That is not
Correct.
correct. That is.
Correct. And we want to, let's say, go over, or we want to, let's say, uh, omit the usage of read host in our scripts. The reason being it only is supported in an interactive mode. In non-interactive terminals, read host is a statement which will break your scripts out. So that's the reason I wanted to avoid that particular approach.
Right. Right. Got it.
Yes, any more questions, guys? Anyone? Any more questions here? Go please.
difference between read and parameter.
Difference between read host and parameter. That is what I just told. What do you mean, or what do you understand by the difference between a read host and a parameter? Did you try, Trinath, by using read host and then parameter? Did you try both of them before I go ahead and re-explain it once again? Did you try that, Trinath? Between what a read host is and what a parameter really is? And did you go through the session once again yesterday on what we are talking about? Again, this is the third or fourth time I'm telling what is a read host and a parameter. I'm okay to tell that, but firstly, I need some inputs from your end, telling what did you understand from that, so that I can correct the same thing. Okay, you tell me what is your understanding, and I'll tell what is the difference between a read host and a parameter.
Uh,
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
for telling
I'm sorry, but your voice is breaking. I'm not able to really understand what you're really talking about. Okay, I'll come back to that. I'll circle back to that. Yes. Any more questions, guys? Anyone? Any more questions?
Kiran, a small doubt, Kiran.
trackable. Uh,
Uh, Trinath, your voice is breaking. Please check your internet connection. It is really let's say breaking out here. So I'm not able to really catch anything out there. If you don't mind, please go ahead and type it out in the chat window. Go ahead, Ramakrishna.
And actually, in the last end of the session, you shown that, right, Kiran? 4 options. One is PowerShell, and another option is CLI, and the third
Hmm.
is something, and fourth is template.
Correct.
Template means that is really ARM template or different one?
Yes, that's an ARM template they're talking about in the documentation.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's an ARM template. They
Okay.
are showing how do you deploy an ARM template and so on and so forth, which we will talk about. But before we do ARM templates, we'll see what is JSON, and once we understand what is JSON syntax, then we'll go into ARM templates.
Okay. Okay. So the template means that is ARM template.
Correct.
Okay. Actually, it was mentioned only template. I was confused that. Let's say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Then firstly, it is parameter, not paramount. And read host is working same. Yes, it is expected to work same, but read host will not work in terminals like Azure DevOps. If you want to execute a script that has a read host in a tool or in a technology called Azure DevOps, your scripts are going to fail. So to explain how it works, firstly I'll have to explain what Azure DevOps is, and then I'll have to come down to this one. So that's the reason. Just take it right now that when you use parameter or I mean, just you can just take the differences. Parameter is better than something called as a read host out here as of now. And yes, did anyone try to create a storage account? Is that working for you all? And how do we create a storage account out here as such? So again, as I was telling yesterday, when you go into the documentation telling storage account, Azure, PowerShell or something like this. Shell. Now it's going to tell you what are the modules that you are going to use, and here it's going to tell you what kind of, let's say, operations that you need to do. Firstly, it's telling sign in, connect hyphen easy account, or yes, connect hyphen easy account or login hyphen easy account, anything works. And then it's telling what is the name of the resource group. So it's parameterizing the name of the resource group, hard coding the value out here, and then they're going ahead and creating a resource group out here, telling new hyphen easy resource group out here as such. Then it's going ahead and scrolling down, and it's telling, okay, fine, you know what is the storage account? It's telling, okay, fine, how do you create a storage account? By using a command called new hyphen is it storage account, and then hyphen resource group name, and then you passed in, or they passed in, a value called resource group out here, and you find something called escape key here. We'll talk about that. Then you have the name, the location, the SKU. When it says SKU, it's nothing but what is the kind or what is the performance type of the storage account that you're creating. Is it the standard or is it the premium? Underscore, what is the uh, replication that you want to create this in? Is it LRS? Is it GRS? Is it RAGRS? Or is it ZRS? What exactly that you want to create in? And the kind of storage account, even if you don't mention this, the storage will by default go into something like storage v2. So let's try the same commands out. So if you want to try the same commands out, right, just copy this out. It supports copying, so you can come here and paste this out here. So it's telling, okay, find resource group. So I'll say this is something like PowerShell RG. So I went ahead, I wrote something called PowerShell RG out here, and in place of this one, you can say East US2 or whichever location that you want to create your account in, and then go scroll down. I don't need the location because I know what my location is. I can just copy this command and I can place this here. So here, if you look at this, the command here is that it is new hyphen AZ storage account hyphen the resource group name. And what they have done in the documentation is that instead of writing the entire command in the same line, you can write the entire command in the same line. But the issue is that for you to read the command, it's going to be a little difficult. For you to just go ahead and read the command out here, right? It's going to be a little difficult. So what you can do is that you can break your line by using something called as an escape key. Call this as an escape character. Okay, Control Y. We call this as an escape character. So if you look at your keyboard, let's see on screen. Look at your keyboard out here. Just below the escape key, the actual escape key, you find a kind of tilde symbol, and then after that you have something like a small inverted quote out here. So it looks something like this. This is the key that I'm talking about. So once you hit this, what Microsoft or what the program will understand is that, okay, fine, the command is not ended yet. It's going to continue in the next lines. So here in the next line, I passed in a parameter called name, and in place of name, they are telling go ahead pass your account name out here. In place of this, you can go ahead in quotes pass something like demo store yes US is 2000, something like this. Some random name I'm passing out here. The location is a parameterized value. It's declared at the line number 2, telling it is East US out here. And then the SKU name. Let's say I want to create this in something like standard LRS. So it's a control space, and this will take some time to load what are all the allowed values out here. So let's say that I want to take standard LRS. This is the value that I want to take, and I want to put this in, let's say, storage v2, and I'll just select everything and I'll execute this out. So what this is now doing, or what my terminal now doing, what my terminal is now doing is that it's taking all my commands. Firstly, it created a resource group for me. So okay, fine, the resource group is created, and then to create a storage account, again, if you check this out, it's going ahead and giving me an error telling that this particular name is already taken. This particular name probably already exists. So what I'll do, let me quickly go ahead change this name to something like demo storage, demo strps, something like this. I'll say shell, something like this, so that I can go ahead and make a unique name out here. And let's try to re-execute this particular line of script. So since the resource group is already there, I am just going in, taking this particular line, taking this particular block of code, and I'm re-executing it back again in order to go ahead and create me a simple storage account out here with some random name. I just took a random name out here. In place of this particular name, you can have your actual project name, you can have your team name, and all these things. You can bind it together, and you can generate a storage account out here. So now, if you check this out, it's telling, okay, fine, this is the storage account, this is the resource group, and this is the primary location, the SKU name, the kind, the access tier, and etc. If I go back into the portal and just refresh the screen, I will have something called PowerShell RG, and inside that, as of now, the resource group is showing as empty. Reason being, it will take some time for Azure, or it will take some time to, let's say, for the Azure to reflect that particular storage account out here. And once a refresh, if you go inside this, it has something called demo store, something like this in standard. And here I have something called LRS and storage V2 in a location called EastUS into a resource group called PowerShell RG with, let's say, I did not mention the access tier at all, but by default, it's setting into something called as a hot access tier out here as such. So the basic command line to go ahead and create a storage account is, before you create a storage account, a prerequisite, you would need to have a resource group. So that's the reason, firstly, we created a resource group, and then we passed that particular resource group property inside this particular, let's say, string, or inside this particular inside this particular parameter called resource group. And here you have your actual resource group name, and then we are using a new command, because if you want to create a resource group, you said new hyphen az resource group. If you want to create a new storage account, you say new hyphen az storage account, the resource group name, the name of the storage account, the location in which you want to create this in, the SKU name being, is it LRS, is it GRS, is it RAGRS, and do you want to have it in standard, or do you want to have it in premium, and the kind of the storage account. Once this is passed in, once you go ahead and pass all these parameters in, you will be able to go ahead and create a simple storage account, provided this name exists, and also you are following the proper convention, telling it is 3 to 24 characters, not it should be unique and no special characters in place out here as such. So this is how you can create a very simple storage account. And how did I do that? Again, I just took the documentation, I understood what the documentation is telling me, I just copied and I'm just pasting it out in my shell, and I'm executing my, let's say, commands out here as such. My suggestion, guys, is that whenever you start a resource, forget about your for each, forget about your if else, forget about all those things out. We'll try to improvise our script over a period of time, but try to make sure to take the bare basic command and understand what your bare basic commands are actually doing, and from there we can improvise our scripting out here as such. Yes. Any questions? Anyone? Any questions still here on
So
what is a command line? Mhm.
this storage account is created in the resource group called PowerShell RG, right?
Correct.
So we need to have the resource group created. Otherwise, by default, resource group will not be there.
No,
By
by
default.
default, the resource group will not be there. You will need to have the resource group in place before you go ahead and, let's say, create your, let's say, storage account out here as such.
Okay.
Yes, any more questions here?
So what I have seen is when I created a new account, right, new free account.
Mm-hmm.
So by default, this is giving Cloud Shell storage,
Mm-hmm.
South Central US.
Okay.
So as a resource group. I mean, I have not
Okay.
created it. So
Okay.
it comes along with the subscription it has taken and then created a resource group.
Okay.
So that becomes
So,
a default one. I run the, if I create a storage account with that
mm-hmm.
command, so then it will take this resource group and create it.
No,
100%.
not really. You have to explicitly pass what is the resource group name. If you don't pass that particular, let's say, parameter called hyphen resource group name, your command will fail. It's just going to tell you that, you know what, an expected parameter called resource group name is not being passed. So it won't take a default value. You have to pass an explicit value to it. So you have to
Okay.
pass an explicit value to your command. Yes, any more questions here with this specific, let's say, command out here as such?
Hello.
Good, please.
My voice is audible, sir.
Yes, your voice is
Clear,
audible now. Zainat, please go on. It's clear, yes.
sir. In this scenario, name DEM demo startup
Hmm.
STPUC two shell animal, sir.
Yes.
What is this name? This name is resource group or container.
You tell me, what do you think is this name? Do you think this is a resource group name? Do you see anywhere something called resource group name in here? Can you tell me what is the resource group name
PowerShell
from
RJ.
PowerShell RG, right? So this cannot be the name of a resource group, correct?
Okay.
So
Yes,
what
sir.
is this name then? What is this name? What is the name, or what are we trying to create here in this line? What are we trying to create in this block?
This is called storage account.
Correct, storage account. So what can this name be? Of which resource this name can be? Storage account only.
Storage account.
Exactly. So
Okay,
we cannot
okay.
create a container without having a storage account in place. Without you having a storage account in place, you can never create a container, isn't it? So first I'm creating a storage account,
Okay.
and this is the name of the storage account. And I just gave a name which is unique in nature. So it can be anything. It can be anything, any name that you want to pass. It can be that. Anything that is meaningful, it can be that. And I went ahead, created a particular storage account, which is getting reflected on the Azure portal out here right now.
Storage account
Uh,
belongs
your voice is again breaking.
under
Sorry,
portion.
your voice is no, your voice is breaking. I'm sorry, your voice is breaking. You can type it out, please. Yes. Any more questions here? Anyone? Any more questions here? Okay, so let's try to include the logic. Let's try to make our script as reusable as possible. Meaning, I want again my client is coming down to me just like RG creation. The client is taking, or the client is telling, just like yesterday we had. He's telling, you know what, I need to take the input, check if the resource group exists. If not, it should also create. It should create the resource group. And now it's telling, he's telling, okay, fine. I also want to pass the name of a storage account. Pass a storage account name. But the client doesn't want to take the effort of passing the entire name, telling it is demo, STP, USE2 shell, whatever it is. No, I don't want to pass the entire name. Rather, I have multiple teams like dev, QA, DevOps team, and so on and so forth. I just want to pass the name of the team, telling it is dev. And the expectation here is that I create a pattern, something like once the client passes in something called dev, I create a pattern, something like dev store XYZ ABC, something like this, 000, something like this. Some random pattern that that they want to go ahead and let's say create out, or they also want to tell that okay fine, is it the zeroth resource group, is it the first resource group, or sorry, is it the first storage account, is it the second storage account, is it the third storage account. They want this name to be changing. So there are two things basically that we need to look at in this particular requirement. Client is telling that okay fine, you know what, I want to go ahead and pass on something like dev, and also the number that I want. Like, is it the 10th is it the 10th storage account? Is it the 11th storage account? What I want. But these values have to be always and always static. This string that you see in between should always and always be static out here. And this number is something that I'll pass. This is what the client is now telling me, is that I just want to pass this out, and you have to create a storage account, something like this. But before creation, check if it exists. If it does, just ask your script to tell me that you know what, it does exist, change your name. If it doesn't, create one. So firstly, before moving to this one, before moving and going in and creating this one, how many of you all do not understand this requirement? Let's first understand the question before we go into the solution, because once you get the question, 50% of the solution is in front of you. So let's see that. How many of us understood this, and how many of you all do not understand this? And if you do not understand, please let me know. I'll re-explain it once again. I'll re-explain it what is my requirement as a client, and then we can start thinking about the solution for the same thing out here as such. So yes, anyone who did not follow this requirement, anyone who did not really understand what I'm trying to do. Okay, I hope you all have understood this. Let's see. This is a value that we have never done. Meaning I'm telling that, okay, fine, I need to pass a name called dev and a value called 003 or something like 3 or 4 or whatever it is. And this string should automatically, let's say, come into picture. This string should automatically, let's say, go ahead and come into picture out here as such. For which, let me open up a new shell. And what I'll do is I'll say param. I'll introduce a parameter. And in this, I'll just go ahead and write something like team name, comma, the number. So team name is let's say, like, you know what, it's a dev, it's a QA, it's a DevOps team, and so on and so forth. So these are the allowed team names. Number can be anything. It can be 1, 2, 3, whatever the client wants to, let's say, go ahead and try to create out. And what I want to do is I want to create a storage account name. So I want a parameter called storage account name. And this has to be something like this. It is whatever the team name that the client is passing plus this string that I'm, let's say, hard coding out here. This is a static string plus the number. This is called concatenation. In a very simple term, I'm just adding these three, or I'm adding, let's say, multiple strings together. I'm adding multiple values together. So value 1, which is passed by the client, value 2, which is static, value 3, which is passing, which is again being passed by the client. This plus this will give me a combined parameter, which means something like this. If I go ahead and say it is dollar team name, I can say plus. PowerShell supports this out, and I'll say in quotes whatever was that particular, let's say, string. I'll just copy this out. I'll say plus the number. So now I just save this out. I'll say addition.ps1. If I try to just execute this out here, the reason that I'm executing it in a separate terminal is because it's easy for us to write something somewhere and then execute it out. I can also execute it in the same terminal, but the issue is that the screen gets split and it'll become a little difficult for me to, let's say, explain what is on the script and what is happening in the output. That's the reason I'm using a different terminal out here. So I'll say dot backslash. I'll say, let's see, what did we save this as? Addition.ps1, yes. I'll say hyphen team name. I'll say dev and then hyphen something like number. I'll say 2. What happens right now is that particular value called storage account name. It's not saving this out. Let me do one thing. I'll do one more statement telling write host storage account name is dollar storage account name. So whatever I'm storing here, I'm just making sure to use that in a write host statement. I'll save this once again and re-execute my terminal. And now if you see, string storage account name is dev store zxy or zyx abc000 or 002 because the number that I pass is 2. Let's say I change my number to 4. I get a different storage account with a number called 4 out here as such. So what my client wants is the same thing. He's telling, okay, fine, you know what, I'm passing you the team name, I'm passing you the number, and take everything together, bind it into a string, and send it to me once again. So this is what I want out here as such. So this is a piece of a logic in this bigger logic that we're trying to, let's say, execute. But before I go in that direction, I want to just make sure to explain this particular concept of addition, or also called as a concatenation out here as such in PowerShell. So yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here on how we are executing this out and how the output is coming out to be? And we'll implement this. Now this is the theory. We'll implement this inside our script out here and see what we can do with this and so on and so forth.
Kiran, this is a string concatenation, right? You can also add number
Yes.
there in between. Let's say I want to have a number.
See again,
Without
string concatenation and a number. See, one thing is that let's try that. I mean, if you want to do a number, what you can tell is something like this. So you have to explicitly tell what is your string, explicitly tell what is your number, for which you need to put before your parameter, you need to put a square bracket and say this is a string. We call this as a typecasting. So I'm telling this explicitly that this is a string. And for number, I have to tell that it is an integer, or int32 with 32 characters and so on and so forth. Now let's see how the script really responds back to me. Let's use the same thing. And yes, it's working. So it's able to bind those and it's able to give you that particular storage account name. So this number now becomes a type or a data type called integer out here as such. But I don't really want this. Reason being, I want to produce a string altogether, because whatever number that they're passing, I just want to bind it and I want to give a string in written out here as such.
Okay,
Getting
no,
my
no,
point?
my question is,
Mhm.
so in the middle, we are adding a string, right? Instead
Mhm.
of that, let's say the requirement is a number. Okay, team name, number, and whatever number customer gives.
Okay.
So do we need to put in double quotes to make it a string? Okay, like that.
Yes, we have to put it in double quotes. So if you don't put it in double
Okay.
quotes, this will be treated as an integer.
Yeah, without that, yeah. Okay.
Yes. So if you put it in a double quote, then that will become a string.
So then it will add team name, that number, and again the number which is
Again,
given.
whatever number that you're passing, exactly. It'll take that number
Oh,
and add it out here as such.
okay.
Hello,
You
sir.
can
Yes,
give
any
the
more
array
question?
also, right?
I'm sorry. You can give array also. Yes, good point. You can give array also. We'll also see how to pass the array.
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, Anand, go ahead, please.
Sir, string plus into is coordination is error, gas, sir. There is
No,
error,
sir.
gas, sir.
No, sir. It won't become an error because this entire part will be treated as a string. So whatever you're passing, whatever number that you're passing, it'll just take that number and it'll, let's say, go ahead and add it to it. That's it. It'll just go ahead and add to a particular string out here and make the entire object as a string. Now this error will come into picture when you're actually doing some addition. You're really, let's say, going ahead and trying to do some addition. For example, I'll just use this for an example. I'll just say number one, comma number two, and client is expected to pass number one and number two. You're doing a simple addition operation. Say addition, and you say number one plus number two. Now let's see what this really does. And let me do one thing. I'll say write host. Sum is dollar addition. So I'm just designing a very simple calculator which goes ahead and adds this out. Understand what really happens here versus the above example. Say calculator and .ps1, and let's see this. So again, you as a client are expected to pass these both numbers out here. So let me do a CLS and say calculator. I'll say that number one. I'll say one. Number two. Okay. The number two. Okay, fine. The number two, which is two, and here, okay, fine. Here it is working, but if you pass this as a string, now it's able to take this as a number. If you pass it in a string value, and just save this out and do the same example once again. Now you see what the difference is. So it's taking your string value into place. So it's telling, okay, fine, number one and number two are strings. Let me take them, let me bind them together, and it's telling a sum of 1, 2. Now, if the same thing happens here, I'll just leave this the way it was earlier, and I'll re-execute this out. And if I pass it in quotes as number one and number two, though I am not passing it as a string value, it is being considered as a string value out here as such. There's a difference between what an integer value is and what a string value really is in the way it operates. Meaning, if you're doing a pure calculation, my suggestion would be to give a typecasting called int int. But in my case, I'm just not doing that because the entire thing is something like a string that I want to build it out. So I'm just going in and passing the number as a string value. So PowerShell is able to understand that, okay, fine, they want to bind two different strings. So let me treat the number as a string, bind it together, give you a name. That's the reason it's not throwing an error. And here, if you do not pass it, it will start throwing the error, or the calculator will not really work the way you want it to work out here as such. Getting my point?
Okay. Okay, sir.
Kiran, can you go into that
Can I go into what? Sorry, can you come in, please?
addition
Okay.
script?
Okay.
Basically, you are using plus as an operator. We can also
Mm-hmm.
use concatenate. Concatenate dollar team name comma and storage
Mm-hmm.
comma, and even that will also work, I guess. Concatenate, we have a function.
Let me see if the concatenation function really works out in PowerShell. Let's see, concat
Concat
PowerShell.
com.
Let's see if you have something called concatenation in PowerShell again. So let's see that. I don't think you have a default function in PowerShell called concat.
We
You
have,
have
I
to
guess.
create a function. I'm not too sure. That's what I'm saying. I'm not too sure if you have something like a concatenation function out here as such, because I haven't really used a concatenation function. We normally bind it using that plus symbol out here to go ahead and, let's say, build things out. But let's see if you have a concat or concatenation. Let's see if I execute this out. Yes, concat is not a commandlet function. So if you say we have, can you tell me which function that are you pointing out to?
Concatenation. Sorry.
Do we have something like, can we do, instead of plus, can we do add ADD? It doesn't work, right?
ADD doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. So plus is the thing that you can go ahead and do that. ADD doesn't really work out here. Or if you just leave it the way it is, let's see if this works out. No, it still doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you have to put an addition out here. That's what is a concatenation in PowerShell out here. In ARM templates, yes, there is a function called concatenation for you to, let's say, go ahead and do this. But if you want to really concatenate, use a function, you'll have to create your own functions out here. You'll have to create your own functions to go ahead and, let's say, perform the same thing out here as such.
Sorry, Kiran, I'll
Let's
check
jump.
it out.
Sure. Let's jump back.
Kiran,
Go ahead, please.
sorry, Kiran. So, Kiran, normally, in general,
Okay.
in the project,
Okay.
how frequently we will create this storage groups and all? Do we get this request frequently to create a storage accounts like this?
Probably not a storage account. If your project is in a very, let's say, initial phases, then yes, the requests are more often than not. But if your project is in a very good phase, they've already developed all the storages and all these things out, you might not get a lot of requests for the storage accounts, but probably you'll have a lot of requests telling that, okay, fine, you know what, I need a container one, or I need so many containers, I need to upload so many blobs out here, I need to do this particular testing, or I need to dynamically generate, let's say, the SAS token using PowerShell script and so on and so forth. So the requirement will be more on the management of your storage accounts out there. For example, let's say that you have in your project, you have 100 different storage accounts. So a client is going to one day come and say that, you know what, I am not using these services over a Saturday and a Sunday. So you should have an automation in place which will just go ahead, reduce everything back into LRS, standard LRS when not in use. And on a Monday again, it has to scale it back to standard GRS and so on and so forth. So it just depends upon in which phase your project is, and depending upon that, the requirements come accordingly.
And to say that when the project is in production and it's no need of execution in the weekend, so in the Friday we will change that storage account into LRS to avoid the cost,
Mhm.
and on the Monday the script again will change the storage account into uh, like in,
TRS, or whatever tier that is, yes.
yeah, like prepaid premium, yeah. So then the costing will. Like that, we have to manage storage
Yes,
accounts in real time.
that's yes, correct.
Oh.
And
And also,
creating
even like
creation of
for
containers and
every
so on.
and
Good, yes.
also for every environment like dev and test environment, UAT environment, pre-production, production, for every environment, there will be storage, different storage accounts.
Yes, there has to be different storage accounts. There has to be separation of data between your pre-production and production environments.
Okay. That is distinct.
That is
Okay.
distinct, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so let's come back. I'll just hold on with the questions. Let's come back and look at the requirement once again. So take the input from the user. This can be achieved by using the parameterization. I do not want to go via the read host, because if I go via the read host again, I have to, let's say, face with the consequences of that. Check if the resource group is there or not. Firstly, I have to check whether the resource group exists or not. If it does, I just have to tell the end user that, you know what, the resource group is already there, so I'm not going to create one. Then after that, it has to check whether or it has to, let's say, take the name, whether it's dev, QA, whatever it is, and add it with a different string, telling it is 00, something like this, plus the number that the client is passing, checking whether that particular name exists in the portal or not, and then and then creating this out if it doesn't exist. So the very first thing, to do the user input, I'll say step one. Let's break our script down into multiple steps so that we are able to process it out. Step one, for the user input, I would go ahead and use something like a param block. So I'll say param, open close parenthesis, and I'll declare multiple parameters like resource group name, one parameter out here, which is a string value. So I'll also mention this out right now since we are there. A string. After that, I have the resource group location, which can be a hard coded value. So I'll just leave it. I'll just leave the resource group location to be a hard coded value and in ECS2. And then I have a string telling it is dollar team name. Then I pass the number as also a string telling it is dollar number. So three different parameters is what I'm, let's say, having here. This is for taking the user input. And step two is checking whether that particular resource group exists if not created. So step two is RG. So whatever we have done yesterday, telling firstly to get the resource group. If it is not there, to go ahead and create it out. So I can just take this, copy it and paste it out here in your script. But what I'll do is I'll again write it. So I'll say RG creation, if else logic, to check whether it's there in the Azure portal already. If it's not, then go ahead and create it out. Firstly, to check whether my resource group is there or not, I will put something called status, something like this, and I'll say get hyphen AZ resource group. So I'm checking whether my resource group is there or not. I'll say with this particular name called dollar resource group name. There's something called dollar resource group name right now. I'll say hyphen error action. I'll say silently continue. So I'm giving an error action out here telling it to silently continue. I don't need this anymore because this is a hard coded value. I don't need this anymore. And what I can do is I'll take this location out and place it right in the beginning, telling explicitly declaring what is my location. I'll place it here, and it's now telling, okay, fine, get this particular resource group with this particular name, trying to say error action is silently continue. And I'll say if the status value.
Kiran, one question here,
Hmm?
if I can ask. So in the
Good,
same
please.
command, I mean, the same status, we can also put hyphen location.
Hyphen location. Let's see, get something. Yes, you can do a hyphen
Get
location too, if I'm not wrong. So you can do
instead
a
of
hyphen location.
declaring variable also, right? Hyphen location and
Mm-hmm.
space.
Dollar location. You can do that
Yeah.
because here dollar location here boils down to this particular location. But again, uh, it's not really specifically looking for that particular location parameter. So that's the reason I'm just checking whether the resource group really exists or not. But
Okay.
yes, you can do a hyphen location as well out there. Just put the error action back again. And I'm telling if the status value, meaning if the status turns out to be a null value. So I'll say equal to dollar null. If the status happens to be a null value, and when can be a status or when can the status be a null value? If
And
the
there's
resource
no,
group with the name is not there, exactly with that particular name is not there. So I'll say now instead of writing a write host, I'll say write warning. I'm just giving client a warning telling that what your resource group is not there. So I'll create one. Let's understand what is the difference between both of them. Let's see how they both work. Both are print statements only, but warning is slightly a little different. So for example, right now I'm doing a write warning and I'm saying RG with the name dollar resource group name doesn't exist. Attempting to create a new one. And finally, I can do a new hyphen, whatever that I have here. I'll just copy this out. I'll reuse my commands as and when possible. And here, instead of resource group, I'll say resource group name, whatever the name that my client is passing. And finally, I'll give a write host statement here. After this command, if this command executes successfully, I'll put a write host statement that created a new storage, or sorry, created a new resource group. And I'll give a color telling it is foreground green. Else, I'll have to put the else statement as well. And in the else, I'll say write host RG with the name or a resource group name already exists. Skipping creation. And I'll put this in a foreground color like yellow. I'm just let's say differentiating my colors. What I'll do is I'll address my storage account in a while. I'll comment this entire block of code. So for which I'll do a less than hash and hash greater than, and between these blocks I'll just take my entire code. I'll just comment it out. So I'm just commenting my entire block of code that's creating the resource group, that's creating the storage account for me. Because first I want to test the resource group whether this particular line of code is actually working. If this is working right, all I can do is the same logic. If else, the same logic I can apply to a storage account creation. Nothing. It's not different at all. It's the same thing, but we just have to let's say change some commands out there. So let's do that. I'll just save this out. I'll say storage account creation or storage account.ps1, and let me go into my shell and let's say dot backslash, and I'll say storage account.ps1 space hyphen the resource group name. I'll say the name of the resource group is something like random resource group. I'll say team name. I'll pass the value, though it's not being used anywhere. I'll still pass the value out here. So number one, I'll say enter. So it's saying warning, and here if you see, the warning is coming out to be in a different color. So it's giving an explicit warning to the user telling that what, this particular resource group does not exists. So I'll attempt to create one, and it created, and then it said okay fine, created a new resource group in a color like green. If I execute my command once again, it's now going to go directly say okay fine, RG, the name doesn't exist, so I'm sorry, I cannot give you this, and so on and so forth. So it's just going ahead and giving you something like what, a statement out here telling that okay fine, I'll skip the creation out here as such. So this logic that we have just implemented yesterday, I'm just redoing the same logic once again. I'm going ahead and I'm creating the resource group if it doesn't exist. Now you all tell me, in the step 3, step 2 was resource group creation. Step 3, I want to create a storage account if it doesn't exist. what do I do here? Depending upon your understanding until now, what all should we do here?
So same, I
What?
mean, take a variable, maybe status or something,
Mhm.
and get the storage
Okay.
account name, and compare
Okay.
it. If that status is equal to null, then uh, you can put
Create it.
right one and create
Yes,
a
I can
new
do this.
page
Mhm.
storage account.
Let's see that the same thing. So I'll just copy the same line from here in line number 18. I'll just try to reuse the same thing. Let's see how it works out. I'll put this in, and here instead of saying it is get call, let me change the status to something like STOR status, storage status. It was RG status. This is storage account status right now. And let's see, in the place of get hyphen AZ resource group, I'll now have a call, or I'll now have a command called get hyphen AZ storage account, because I'm now trying to see whether that particular storage account really exists or not. And let's see what are all the parameters it requires. Firstly, the resource group name. It's telling, okay, fine, tell me which resource group that you are really looking into, and I'll say it is the dollar resource group name, whatever that the user is passing, and hyphen the name of the storage account, whatever is the user is passing. I'm just going ahead and hold on. Let's do one thing. The storage account name again should be a concatenation, meaning it has to be added. So what I'll do is going here, I'll say storage account name, whatever that we did here. I'll just copy this out. I'll say storage account name is nothing but the team name plus the string plus the number. And in here, I'll copy this out and I'll paste the storage account name here. So I'm checking whether that particular storage account really exists. Then error action, silently continue. Because if it doesn't exist, then it will throw an error for me. And now the same logic, if else is the same. So I'll just copy this out. I'll just paste it after this particular line. And I'll say instead of if status, I'll take the storage status right now and place it here. I'll say if the storage status is equal to null, and I'll say instead of RG, I'll say storage with the name, dollar storage name doesn't exist, attempting to create a new one. Then in place of new hyphen something like this, in place of this particular command, I'll just take the entire command that is there, the entire logic that we know. I'll copy this out and I'll paste it here in the loop. For sanity, and we get everything here. And I'll say this is resource group name. And in here, the name of the storage account will be storage account name. So it's a dollar storage account name. Location is the same thing. Kind and all these things is good enough. And this is the command for me to go ahead and create a storage account. So whatever new hyphen AZ resource group was there, I changed it into new hyphen AZ storage account. Took my older command in, changed the values. Instead of going for hard coding, I'm using the value that my client is passing and I'm using the value that I'm creating. And I'll say right was created a new storage account. Same thing. I'm just repeating my logic. I'm just going ahead, repeating this out. And I'm just recreating my storage out here in the step 3. And I don't need this anymore. So now let's see. Let's save the script out. So very first step, user input. Second step, if else logic for resource group creation. Third step, if else logic for the storage account creation out here. So doing the same thing,
So
but the commands are changing. Good, please.
one small problem. If the resource group doesn't exist, then
Okay.
storage account should also say, okay, this is creating and then executing the storage account.
Exactly. So it's creating and then executing, or it's creating and then executing that block of storage account out here as such. So that's the reason we have the if else. That's the reason we really have an if else loop out here as such. Getting my point?
No, else will not come into the picture. Oh, no. It is a
Else will
separate
come
step.
into the picture. Else will come into the picture if your resource group already exists. That's where it is going into the else loop.
No, this is out of
So
else, right? So the storage account is the next step, actually.
see, storage account is the next step, but first step is what? Creating the
Yeah.
resource group if doesn't exist. Yes, and storage account is coming out of the else. I did not really put it inside the else out here. If I did that right, it will only create a storage account if the resource group already exists out there. So I'll have to
Correct.
always execute my script two times. First time to
Hmm.
create the resource group, second time to create the storage account out here as such.
That's it.
Okay. So let me come here and let me do a CLS, clear screen. Let me expand this window and say storage account dot ps1 hyphen the resource group name. Here I'll again say random RG or PowerShell RG because PowerShell RG already exists. Hyphen the team name. I'll say dev hyphen the number. Sorry, hyphen the number. I'll say 5 and I'll say enter. So now it's telling okay fine. RG with the name PowerShell RG already exists, so I won't create it. But now the storage account with this particular name called dev store something like this doesn't exist. Attempting to create a new one, and now it goes ahead and tries to create a new storage account out here as such. So it's telling okay fine, you know what, it doesn't really, it's not there. So let me go ahead create it, and this call will take some time because storage account is a big resource. So it'll try to go ahead create it out, check whether it's provisioned properly, and finally it's telling okay fine, the storage account is already there, and it's printing out this particular value. This entire block is just printing out telling that okay fine, you know what, storage account is created for you out here as such. Yes, any questions till here?
In the region,
Yeah.
is there any gap east space US or there is no gap at all? There is no
You don't
space.
have to really pass a gap. You don't really have to pass a space. You can do a east US2 without space, not a problem.
East US also we can do like that, right? Without
Yes, you
space.
can give east US also without space, but you can, if even if you give it in space, but if you give it in space, please pass it in quotations because your white spaces are considered to be a character. So please give it in quotations. The PowerShell call that you're making will be able to convert it without any spaces and all these things out. So that's a
Right. But
background process that happens.
generally the region is without space, right? I think it is
The region is no
West
space.
US
That's
or
correct.
East.
Mhm.
Okay. Ah, okay.
Yes. Any questions till here? With this particular script where we are trying to put an end-to-end creation of firstly the user input, then we went ahead, we did a storage account, sorry, a resource group, and then a storage account out here as such. Any questions still here?
Kiran,
Good, please.
uh, just give a suggestion advice. Okay. So
Hmm.
this you are doing for one storage account and one resource group. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Now, so if the requirement is for at a time five
Hmm.
one resource group or five resource storage accounts or multiple resource groups, multiple storage accounts. How we
Okay.
can give that for loop and how we can pass the parameters and how it will work. Can you advise so that we know?
Sure. So, okay, fine. If the requirement is multiple things, then very importantly, this will become an array. Now, let's understand how the array values really work. But before I just go there, I would just like to see if there are any other questions in this particular
Yes,
script.
yeah.
Yes, anyone else who has any questions in this particular script or anyone who's not following it before I move forward? Anyone, any questions till here?
Hello.
Good, please.
I have something like you have written the write warning. Instead of
Hmm.
write warning, can I write write host resource group with the name dollar resource group name already exists. Something like skipping creation. Can I write
You
it?
can do it. You can do write host as well, but write warning is more like, it's just telling the client that, what, warning, what, you do not have a storage account, so I'm creating a new one. And the reason we give a warning while creating a new one is because every time you create a new one, right, you incur some cost out there. There is a cost that is associated with the resource. That's the reason I'm just giving a warning out here, but you can also do a write host. Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, after that, else can I write host like attempt to create the resource group with the dollar resource group name.
Where do you want to write it? Can you come again, please?
Uh, if
Eh,
you are used, if can you
mhm.
scroll down?
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, if status you have written that. I'm telling
hmm
that after that.
After this one,
Can I
is it?
use after the else? Step two.
Step two. Okay, fine. So step two status is here.
Okay. Instead of writing write warning, I said that write host.
Yes, you can do this. You can do this, but please make sure to do it inside the loop, not outside the loop.
Ah, okay.
Please make sure to do it inside the loop. Reason being, if you write it outside the loop, right? No matter what your status is, whether it's a null value or whether it's some value, it'll always tell you that okay, fine, I'm attempting to
Okay.
create a storage account, or
What
it'll
is the
attempting to create
difference
a
between write warning and write host?
nothing. Warning is just going to give you a warning out here. Did you see this?
Ah, yes. Okay.
So it's just going to tell you, okay, fine, you know what, warning, I'm creating a resource for you. So just heads up for the client telling that okay, fine, you are going to pay additional cost out here as such. So right host
Okay.
will just
Thank
go
you.
ahead just print out whatever it is there, but warnings will actually
Okay.
go ahead and give you some kind of a warning out here as such.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I get it.
Yes. Any more questions, guys?
Hi, Kiran.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's that param you declare, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is compulsory or what?
If I don't
Param.
declare it, then yes. If I don't declare it, how would you pass the inputs to your script? Or how would you rather tell that, you know what, this is what my name is, or this is what the team name is? So in order to declare inputs to my script, parameterization is important, yes. If I
Okay.
don't do
And
that,
we can,
confession.
yeah, we can give any like string, any type we can give data type.
You can give any data type, string, integer, hash table, arrays, whatever it is, you can go ahead and
Okay.
give those data types out here.
But param is compulsory.
Yes, param is compulsory if you want to go ahead and let's say pass user inputs into your script.
Okay. Thanks.
Typecasting is not required, right, Kiran? A string, the
Typecasting
type.
is not really required. It's a good practice to have a typecasting because
Correct.
as a user, right, if I, you're writing a script and I join your team after like about 6 months after you started, and I'm just trying to go through the script. I'm trying to understand what exactly that you have done here. Are you trying to let's say use a string, or are you trying to use an array? And depending depending upon this, me as a user, I'll find it easier for myself to learn this out. And also you, if you want to let's say after a year you want to debug the script, you come here, you see your script, you understand, okay, fine, this typecasting here shouldn't be a string, it should be an array, and so on and so forth. So this is going to help you in order to maintain a good balance between your script and the understandability, and also the maintenance of your scripts are better if you have a typecasting,
Correct.
but
So
not mandatory. Mhm.
if you won't give any typecasting, by default it will take string or.
String, correct.
Oh,
By default it's going to take a string.
okay.
Okay, any more questions, guys?
This is a compiler, right? Not interpreter. PowerShell.
Mm, Correct, it's a compiler, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do one thing. So let's go here and let's look at the requirement that someone had, is that how do I create multiple resources? Create multiple resources out here. How do I really do that? But before even creating multiple resources, we'll see how to pass multiple resources and how does PowerShell really treat it. So what I'll do is I'll just do a param, and instead of going ahead and declaring a string, this is a string, I'll declare an array. How do I declare an array? I'll say string, and within that, let's say square brackets, I'll declare one more square bracket. This is the declaration of an array. The data type now is telling that okay, fine, this is an array here. I'll say dollar names, and I'll just do a simple statement telling write host, my name is dollar names. I'm just doing a very simple statement telling that okay, fine, My name is out here telling this is dollar names out here as such. I'll just save this out. Say array.ps1, and let's see how can I really use this out. So now I'll say I'll say foreground color yellow or something like green, something like this, so that it's clear on what we're doing. And let's see, I'll say dot backslash in the same directory, and I'll just go ahead and say let's see, this is array.ps1, so I'll just take array.ps1 hyphen names, and the way I pass my names is in a comma separated value. I'll say Kiran, comma Suresh, comma Mahesh, a comma separated value, and I'll say enter. It's saying, okay, fine, my name is Kiran, Suresh, and Mahesh out here as such. So it's taking those names. It's telling, okay, fine, it's going ahead and printing this out in a single line. Now, my question, guys, is that if you want to make sure that each and everything is aligned, what do we need to do here? How do we need to treat this out?
For each.
For each, exactly. So I'll say for each value in dollar names, right host, and instead of passing dollar names here, I'll say dollar value. Let's see how PowerShell really treats this out. So let's come back again. Same script. I'm just pressing the up arrow on my keyboard to, let's say, load the earlier commands. Enter. Now it's saying, okay, fine, you know what? My name is Kiran, and then Suresh, and then Mahesh out here as such. So it is able to get those, and it's able to tell, okay, fine, for each out here. Now put the same logic back again. I'll say resource group names. Instead of telling names, I'll say resource group names. And I can say instead of right host, or I'll put right host with the same thing, and I'll say new, I'll place this in new hyphen AZ resource group, and I'll say hyphen name. I'll say it is dollar value hyphen location. I'll say something like East US. No spaces. Save this out. Re-execute my script, and the same around. I'll say resource group names. I'll say test01, test02, test03. Saying, are you sure this is so? The test01 already exists, so that's the reason it's saying this is existing. I'll say yes, and fine. So it's saying invalid location ECUS, the resource group already fine. The resource group was already there in ECUS, so that's the reason it's giving me this particular error. And then I have a test2 and test3 being created using that particular for each block out here as such. So I'm directly passing a string value, taking that particular string value in here. Sorry, I'm directly passing an array value, taking that array value in here, and I'm saying, okay, fine, pass that array in something like a comma separated value, do a for each on top of it, then go ahead and create this out. And this did not get created, test01 did not get created because test01 already exists on my portal. It's already there on my portal as a part of earlier creation, but it's a part of ECUS2, and I was now telling that please create it in ECUS. It's saying, okay, fine, that is already there in ECUS2. I cannot recreate it in ECUS, so I'll fail. Same thing, if you want to go ahead and create a resource group, if you want to go ahead and let's say create a storage account, convert this data type into an array, telling it, okay, fine, I need an array. For example, you can say the number is an array. You can go ahead and say that it is 1, 2, 3, 4, and etc. And for each and every number, you can end up creating a name here. And once that's there, you can check whether that particular storage account exists and go ahead and create it inside the for each loop out here as such. The same thing, same logic, but within a for each loop. Same logic executed within a for each loop out here as such. This is how you can go ahead and use arrays in place of a string in order to go ahead and read resources. But we just have to understand how to declare the array and how to pass the array over a runtime. And depending upon those things, you can go ahead and let's say go ahead and get your statements out here as such. Yes, any questions here?
Even in earlier scripts, actually, we used to give the at the rate for arrays, right, Kiran? Now, why we are not giving at the rate here? And normally, when
If you want to give an at the rate, Yes, I mean, if you want to give an @ you can do this. You can say this is a blank array, but I don't have to declare it explicitly. Reason being, I have a typecasting here, which is explicitly telling this is a data type called array. If I did not give this typecasting, then the let's say question is different. Then I could have gone ahead and said this is an array by using is equal to @ open close parenthesis. But since I have a typecasting here, it's already telling the data type is array. So I don't really need to declare something called is equal to @ open and close parenthesis out there.
So this is another way of declaring that.
Yes, it's another way of, let's say, telling what is your data type really is.
It will become a static, Kiran. @ means we are assigning the values to the array there itself in the initialization.
In the initial stage, it really is not a static value. You can go ahead and, let's say, override it in your, let's say, terminal. You can go ahead and, let's say, override this out in your terminal out here. So that's not a static value, but it's just another way. It's a better way to declare that this is an array. Yes, any more questions here, guys? Yeah, any more questions here? So let me go here and see what are all the storage accounts that I do have in my portal. So I have a couple of them. Let me recreate, or let me create one more using my earlier script called storage creation. And let's see, let's start. I'll say this number 10, something like this. And let me recreate another, let's say, storage account so that I have a bunch of storage accounts so that we can go ahead and do our next set of operations out here. So I'm going ahead, creating a new storage account out here. And let me do one thing. Now the requirement is slightly changed. You have storage accounts that are there on the portal. The client is telling, okay, fine, you know what? I have a couple of storage accounts out here on your portal. In my case, I have 3 storage accounts. After this gets created, I'll have 3. And let's say that the third storage account or the second storage account that I do have is in a tier called standard GRS. So I'll just go into something called as configuration of this particular storage account. Let's see, where is the setting, where is the configurations, and I'll change the configuration to something called as GRS. Or let's see where the configuration will be. So this is scope, this is something like this. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's see where this really is. Okay, replication as LRS. Let me find the redundancy, and let me say this is GRS out here. I'll save this out. So what I'm now doing is that I'm just changing the tier of one particular storage account out here using the Azure portal. So from the Azure portal, earlier this was under something called configuration. They have now shifted this under redundancy. Better good option, because this is a redundancy, ideally should be here. You can shift it to, let's say, LRSGRS or RAGRS out here from the Azure portal as such. Now, if I want to do the same operation, let me just go ahead and let's refresh. I have storage 10. This is an LRS also. If I want to do the same operation using a PowerShell script, now to create, I said it is new. To get, I am saying it is get. In order to modify something, what can be the command, guys? Did we use any kind of a modification in our PowerShell scripts earlier? Can anyone recollect about it? In order to change something,
Kiran,
set,
set.
exactly, set, right? Because we did a set hyphen, exactly, it's a set hyphen execution policy. Now I want to do one thing. I want to do set hyphen AZ storage account. I want to set a property of a storage account called SKU name to something called as standard GRS. So I'll say hyphen resource group name. I'll say PowerShell RG. I'll say name of the storage account. I'll get my storage account name. Let me hard code this value. 10, and I'll say SKU name will be something like standard GRS. And we put it in standard GRS out here. I'll say force. Just go ahead and set this out. So it's set hyphen something. set hyphen AZ storage account, the resource group name, the name of the storage account, and what do you want to really change. In my case, I want to change the SKU from standard LRS to standard GRS. Again, I cannot change a storage account from standard to premium. This is something that we have to keep in mind. If I do that, the script will just throw an error telling that, you know what, this is not possible. I'm sorry. I cannot help you out here. So now if I go ahead execute this out, so it's telling set hyphen AZ storage account, the resource group name is something like PowerShell and the name of the storage account is something. And now if you see, it went ahead and changed that particular storage account called 10 to something called standard GRS. So if I come back, this is still showing this LRS. I'll just refresh the screen, and now I'm able to see that this particular storage account is changed into something called GRS out here as such. So I have 3 storage accounts right now. 2 are in GRS. If I refresh this out, 2 are in GRS, 1 is in LRS out here. And I used a command called set hyphen AZ storage account, passed in the values like the resource group name, the name of the storage account out here, the SKU name, and so on and so forth, and went ahead and did this again. If I want to break this command into smaller lines, I can do that as well by using that escape character out here as such, so that it is more in a readable format out here as such. Yes, any questions still here?
But you said we cannot convert it into premium, right? And the GRS is not premium, or
No, GRS is not premium. GRS is just an option and redundancy.
okay.
Performance is standard and premium. There are two things. So replication
Oh,
can go ahead into, let's say, GRS, RA, GRS, and so on and so forth. But
so,
performance cannot go from standard to premium.
okay. Premium is another one, right? Like SKU name. Premium
Premium is,
underscore GRS.
yes. So you're telling please put it
Kind
in a
is
premium
optional.
tier. Sorry, kind is optional. Yes, any more questions, guys?
So SKU name can be changed. SKU name can be renamed, modify is acceptable, but storage account name cannot be renamed or changed, right?
No, yes, you can do that. So that's the reason your set hyphen AZ storage account command doesn't even support those things. So it only supports something like SKU name access tier. That's it. So you can change your access tier from hot to cool, cool to hot. That's something that you can that can be done. But you nowhere will find something like location.
Name is there, right?
Sorry, where is the name again?
Can you keep
Okay, but
yeah, that,
yes, but you are trying to set a particular storage account with a particular name. Now, if I go ahead and do something like 11, what am I really changing out here? So if I say set hyphen something, I'll say access tier. I'll say cool. And if I just go ahead and execute this out, it's going to ask me the resource group name. I'll say PowerShell RG. I'll say yes, go ahead with that. Very simple. It's telling you know what? I'm not able to understand what you're trying to tell me. The resource actually doesn't exist. There is something, there is nothing there out there. So very simple. The name here is telling what is the name of the storage account that you want to modify, and then after that I'm passing the properties that I want to modify out here.
oh, just like resource group name you are passing,
Exactly.
similar way.
Similar way I'm passing the storage account name to out here as such. Yes, any more questions, guys?
Okay, then in real time, if we are not using that storage account in real time,
Mm-hmm.
disabling and enabling concept is there. If we are not using, just disable and
No,
recover.
no, you cannot disable it out. Storage account is a platform as a service, so you cannot really disable a service out here as such. You can all at max if you really want to, let's say, reduce your cost. If your client is someone who tries to reduce the cost on a weekend when the applications are not being used, you can just reduce the storage account to an LRS, or reduce the storage account to, let's say, a cool tier and so on and so forth, and scale it back to GRS during your workday. So that's something that you can do at max, but you cannot disable the usage of a storage account. You cannot just disable storage account out here as such. You still have to pay
No
some
any
minimum cost
option.
to it. No,
Can we change from premium to standard?
no, you cannot. You cannot do a premium to standard. Once it's in premium, it is in premium. Once it's in standard, it's in standard. So you cannot, let's say, do that particular operation out here as such.
In
Yes,
standard, we are seeing all these options, right? Kiran, standard underscore LRG, standard underscore GRA and all.
yes,
Similarly,
yes.
we have these kind of options in premium as well for SQName, like premium
For
underscore LRG, premium
for
underscore.
that, if you check your storage account out here, this is what really we need to answer. So if you go to premium, see the only thing that you have is these two, LRS and ZRS. So these are the only two options that are really available out here. And this also depends upon the regions, of course. It also really depends upon which region that you're trying to really create the storage account in. And depending upon those, you would be able to, let's say, go ahead and tell whether it's LRS or ZRS. These are the only two options that are supported at this point in premium. Yes, any more questions, guys? Okay, so one final thing that I want to do is this. So this is the bare basic command to go ahead and set up things out. Let's see what I want to really do with this. Is that, let's say there are in my case I just have 3 different storage accounts. In a real-time environment you might have, let's say, about 10 or 20 or 100 as such. So now my client is asking me that, you know what, I have so many storage accounts. My clients that are using these particular storage accounts are going on a December vacation. It's a Christmas, so I don't really want to, let's say, use these particular services. I want to reduce everything, that is, or everything, into something like standard LRS. So he's telling, now I ask my client, okay, fine, can you tell me what is the tier of your storage accounts currently? My client is telling that, you know what, as of now, the storage account has a mixed tier. Sometimes some of the storage accounts are in LRS, some of them are in RAGRS, some of them are GRS. There are multiple storage accounts, there are multiple tiers that are available out here for me, but my client is telling me, please identify all the storage accounts which are not in LRS, catch them and change them into something like, or catch them and change them into something like LRS out here, meaning get all the storage accounts which are not LRS and change them into LRS. This is the requirement I have right now. So guys, tell me, what can we do here? What can be the approach here? How can we go ahead and approach this particular scenario?
In the if statement, we need to write SKU name not equal to standard underscore
Mhm.
LRS.
Correct, but before I write the if statement, do I need to do something else?
Get the
Storage
SKU name.
accounts? No. Get and set, yes. But what do I need to get? What do I need to set?
Get the storage
Get the
accounts.
GRS and set the
The
LRS.
storage
Get the
accounts, right?
storage
So
account
to
and
get
set
the
the
storage accounts, exactly. So I'll say it is storage accounts. This storage accounts can be an array, because I'm now telling that, you know what, I have multiple storage accounts out here which are not in LRS. It can be an array, right? So I can say is equal to get hyphen AZ storage account. I'm just going ahead and passing this out. I am not passing the value of the storage account. I'm not telling what is the storage account. I'm just doing a get call here. If I do this, I'm not even passing what is the resource group name. It's just going ahead into my subscription. It's not considering what my resource group name is, what my let's say storage account name is. It's just going ahead getting all the storage accounts that are there within all the resource groups. But in my case, I have everything in this PowerShell RG only, because when we created, we were just using PowerShell RG. But in case of PowerShell RG, in place of PowerShell RG, you can have anything else. If you want to specify, okay, fine, you know what, I need all the resource, or I need all the storage accounts that are residing in a resource group called PowerShell RG, you can also do that by using this particular command. you don't have to pass the name of your storage account. That is not mandatory. You have to pass the name of the storage account only if you want the properties of one specific storage. Otherwise, you don't have to. So now I'm telling you can go ahead and do this. Then you can say a get call. But the issue with this get command is that it's getting me all the storage account, irrespective whether they are in LRS or whether they are in GRS. I have to filter out only those storage accounts that are not in LRS. Then what do I need to do here? What can I do here?
Pipeline.
Type symbol where
Exactly, pipe
SQL
symbol.
where
Yes, I can do a pipe symbol
Unfiltered.
Where
I'll say
object.
where object,
FT.
and then I can say dollar underscore dot. I'll say SKU. Now let's see this.
SKU name.
Yes, SKU name. Let's see SKU name is equal to or is not equal to
Not equal to
standard
LRS.
LRS. Standard
Standard
underscore
underscore.
LRS because this is the name. Underscore LRS out here. Let's see this. Let's execute this out here right now. But it's still getting everything. It is still not considering that particular parameter. If you see this, it's still not working. The
Put it in loop
situation
because
there. I'm sorry, please.
loop. I mean, we need to put it in a for loop.
No, you don't have to because here I'm just replacing those things into let's say with this particular filter using their object. But the thing here that I'm trying to point out is that do I give my condition called where object some SKU name is not equal to something, it's still getting SKU name with LRS, which means that my logic is not really working, which means there is some issue with this particular filter. This is working. This is working. That's the reason you're getting all this output. But after that, this is not working. That's the reason you're also getting LRS here. Which means let's see this. The get hyphen storage account call, easy storage account, works in a slightly different way, which we just need to check this out. So an easy storage account. And I only want a property called SKU name. I want to see what is that particular property. I'll say open close brackets dot SKU name. But do you see I don't have a property called SKU name at all. Though here it tells you that you have a property called SKU name, I don't have a property called SKU name at all here. So it's not returning me anything, but SKU returns me something because SKU here is not only LRS, GRS, and so on, it's also standard there, right? That's something that we have to adhere to. So if I run this out, it's giving me an entire property block telling it is okay, fine, SKU, resource kind, locations, capabilities, and all that stuff. In this particular subsector, I only want dot name. So if I do a dot name here, this is what will give me the actual property. Telling it is standard LRS, standard GRS, and standard or GRS out here as such. So
By using select also we can get, right?
by using select also you can get, but an easier way to do it is just, yes, you can do a select and let's say kind of get this out, put a pipeline and say select and get this out. But just an easier way, shorter way is I'm just going ahead and doing .sku. But yes, you can do a select also. But my point is this, .sku exists, .sku name doesn't exist. That's the reason I'll need to put something like this. I'll need to say .sku, let's say .sku dot the name of that particular SKU is not equal to standard LRS. This condition will work out. So the condition has to slightly enhance out here. So if I just go ahead, run this out, let me do a clear screen. Let's run this particular logic out here. Now if I do run this out, now I am only able to get these two storage accounts. Telling that, okay, fine, these are just the two storage accounts out here. Which is telling it is standard GRS and standard GRS, and it's telling 10 and 5. These both are in, let's say, standard GRS out here. Now I can put a for each loop. I can say for each dollar name in dollar storage accounts. Then I can do a set hyphen AZ storage account. Now the point here is that the set hyphen AZ storage account commands now require resource group name and also the name of the storage account. But in my script, I have nowhere passed the resource group name. Then how can I get the resource group name here? What can I do to get the resource group name here?
Get hyphen again. Get hyphen is a resource group command.
Right, but why do I need to do a get hyphen easy resource group command? Because I just need that particular resource group where my storage account is residing. I don't need all the resource groups. I have a property already here telling it is resource group name and storage account name. Can't I not filter with that? Can't I not just go ahead and let's say take that? Which means that this command, I'll just remove this out firstly. I'll just execute the loop. I'll just go ahead and execute a blank loop and come back here. I'll say set hyphen AZ storage account. I'll say hyphen the resource group name is dollar name within this loop dot resource group name. So I'm getting the exact resource group name where my storage account is setting in. Hyphen name of the storage account again is dollar name dot the name, not the storage account name, I think. Not the storage account name. Hyphen the SKU name now becomes standard LRS hyphen force. I'm taking all that particular storage accounts. I'm filtering the property using, let's say, that particular loop concept. And now I'm executing this out. And now I'm setting everything back into LRS out here as such. So it's going out, taking this particular storage accounts. It's going through each and every storage account there, trying to see what your storage account. You can of course improve this logic by using a lot of write host statements, telling that this is the storage account that I'm operating and so on and so forth. And based upon that, it's going ahead and reducing it back. So it's setting operations currently going on that requires excessive access. Let's see why this is coming up. Okay, set hyphen operations currently performing on this particular storage account that requires excessive access out here. Let's see why this is coming up. What is the operation that is currently going on this particular storage account? Let's see. Okay, so I just shifted it back to LR, shifted it back to GRS out here. So let me try to run this out once again, which is a little weird. Let's see this. So this is SKU name and then it's force to LRS. Let's see why it is telling me that the operation requires something like that. Let's see. So this is GRS is good enough. I have a feeling that there is a, let's say, data migration that's being happening between your primary and the secondary region. So I think it will take some time to get them back to, let's say, LRS. Still fails. Let's see. Let me try to sorry. Let me try to get it back manually and see whether it's allowing me to do that. So let me put it back into LRS. Let's just save. And let's check this out. So it's trying to update the redundancy. The script should have worked, but I'm not too sure why this particular, let's say, operation is breaking out. I can check that, but this should be a wholesome logic. You can try this out at your end and let me know if it works for you. And let's see, it's telling, okay, fine, the same error is again coming up. So there is a data synchronization that is happening in the background. So I'm not able to break that particular data synchronization in this particular update. So I'll have to try it in, let's say, about 30 minutes or so, and that should, kind of take care of it. So even if I do it in the same portal, it still fails. So that means that there is a data synchronization that just got kicked in because you just changed the tier from, let's say, LRS to GRS. So that's happening in the background. That's the reason it's not really explicitly letting me change this particular tier. But after some time, it should allow you to go ahead and, let's say, put it back into something like LRS out here as such. Is any questions here? Anyone?
Yeah,
Any
correct.
questions here?
Yeah, correct. Maybe backend, it's still the refresh
It's
is
still
not
not
happening.
reflecting. Yes.
There is no syntax errors here in this.
Mhm.
So, Kiran, one thing we are not able to understand, and when you run that, it is showing the SQA name. Then why we are mentioning SQA dot name? Why we are segregating that SQA dot name? What is
Because
this?
you do not have a property called SKU name right away. You're not able to figure out a property called SKU name right away, right? So you're telling something like this, and you only want to, let's say, you only want to filter out that something called SKU name. Though it is showing you, it doesn't really have that particular property. It has a property called SKU, and inside that it has a property called name. So that's the reason it's simply telling you, okay, fine, you know what, I cannot give you a property called SKU name because this is an internal property that I have. Though I am displaying it out for you for your convenience, if you want to grab it, you have to tell SKU.name. You cannot get that. You
Only
cannot really
run,
get that directly.
only run get a AG storage account, Kiran.
Okay,
Only run
this
that.
too. Okay. Yes, that will show you the property. That's what I'm telling you. That will show you the property for your convenience. This is for your convenience. The table is formatted according to your convenience out here. But you cannot get this property by using SKU name. You
So
cannot really
what?
get this.
Similar
Sorry?
to kind of alias kind of thing to understanding purpose, not the actual
Yes,
name.
not the actual name.
How can we
Not the actual.
understand?
By practice, by regular practice. How did I understand? Only when I got this particular failure, I got that right. Very simple.
For
By regular
resource
practice
group
only.
name also like that we have, or
For resource
resource group.
remove, it's a direct property. So just put this in. Just put a dot. See what are all the direct properties that you can really, grab out here. Just say dot. You have access here. You have blob access and all that stuff. If you want resource group name, you have a resource group name directly. If I just execute this out, I'll just get what is the resource group name that's my storage account part of. So I'm just getting the resource group name out here as such. So just sheer practice. That's it. Yes, any more questions, guys?
In general, who will perform these activities? Administrator or DevOps engineer in the real-time projects? Who will change this from GRS to LRS kind of?
Depends. It can be a administrator. It can also be a DevOps engineer. So if you have a separate administration team, they can do it. But in today's scenario, it's mostly DevOps engineers who are going ahead and performing this out. Yes, any more questions, guys? Anyone, any questions that you can take before we close?
So, Kiran, it's a general
Mm,
question.
yeah,
In
please.
storage accounts, is there any limitations, Kiran? Like what kind of data in storage accounts we maintain in the product?
Mostly unstructured nature, like mostly blob data is what we maintain there. So it can be files, it can be images, it can be videos, and such a kind of a data is generally maintained inside a particular storage account until unless you're going for something like a page blob or you can going for an append blob or something. In those cases, we specifically maintain something like .vhd information and so on and so forth. But usually in a general categorization, it's an unstructured data that we maintain out here as such. Yes, any more questions, guys? All right, so that's it from mine today. That's what I wanted to cover. And in the next weekend again, we'll go ahead and let's say sit down on PowerShell. But until then, guys, please take these sessions, please take these recorded sessions, and please try this out. Please go ahead, put your own logic in. It's all about practice. So put your own logic in, try this out in the next session. we'll go ahead and see how do you create a container, how do you go ahead and upload some blobs inside the container, and so on and so forth. And over a week, over the coming week, I'll go ahead and also tell you all, let's say, give you all a couple of assignments, and we can try this out here as such. Thank you, and have a good day ahead.
Hi, Kiran.
So it's
Hello.
already late. I have to jump on to another class. If you have a quick
No,
question, I'll take it.
not a doubt. I'm just asking and requesting. Along with the link, can you share the whatever you have shared in PowerShell? Can you share that?
So if I share that, people will just copy it and paste it out. That's it. I know this is going to happen. That's the reason I'm not sharing it out right away. I have
Okay.
all those scripts provided in a link, but if I share it right now, you'll simply take it, copy it, and paste it. There is nothing that you're going to learn about it. My idea is to not give you the script. My idea is to give you the logic. Now you
Okay.
play around with it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. Yeah.